should probably just move on and talk about a completely uncontroversial and non-compromising for the music scene.
Yeah. This is going to be a much more simple and straightforward conversation about, really just a guy who puts his head down and just makes good music, He's not really one for the press.
We joke, but this is actually what happened with this album in the rollout for this album.
Weirdly enough.
I'm just so mad to say it, but I really like the new Father John Misty album, God's Favorite Customer.
I could not feel that mood anymore. Like, truly, it's been a while since I have been completely frustrated with enjoying it. And really, this album, I think for me, forcibly untangled some of my hang-ups I have with Father John Misty, where I was listening to this album and I was rooting for it to fail, and I was like, what has Father John Misty really done that has inspired this kind of animus in me? Because I think many of us, myself certainly included, just went way too hard in the other direction on the Father John Misty is bad actually train, because to be fair, he dropped a garbage album. It was really not good. But after hearing this album, I think my biggest takeaway was, while I still have zero time for pure comedy, I can appreciate what he was trying to do on pure comedy more after hearing him do it here but good.
Pure comedy was so purposefully dense and enigmatic that my first reaction to it was anger. I'm not really sure. There's a lot going on here. I feel like I need to unpack it. And then on subsequent listens, I just think it's purposefully kind of hard to unpack and walks you in so many circles. It's just who am I? What do I believe? What are these things? What do I value? Am I being serious or not? And after a while, that can just get so grating and so irritating, which I think if you're able to kind of see the sincerity in pure comedy, there's a lot of good songwriting in there. And there are also a lot of things I think that go on for way too long and belabor kind of exhausted points way too far. So it is to God's Favorite Customer's advantage that it's about half the length of pure comedy, way more focused. And also,
there are songs.
There
are songs on here. That's one big difference. I like albums with songs on them as opposed to albums that don't have songs on them.
Back to why Father John Misty kind of blew up in the first place was this just unbridled sincerity and just yo, I'm going to be sweet and saccharine and you're going to enjoy it. And I'm like, well, damn it, you know what? You're going to spin this yarn and I'm going to love it, which he does on this song. And I think another thing about God's Favorite Customer that really intrigues me is there's this kind of layered actual narrative to it, which is fascinating in the same way that the new Arctic Monkeys album was kind of fascinating, where it's we're this lounge band on the moon or Mars or whatever. I still don't like that album, but I like the idea of that album.
I also like the idea of that album more than that. But
this has
album.
This has the real world story of Father John Misty, the man, kind of watching his life fall apart and checking himself into this hotel and dealing with all of these things. And the way he writes the songs, all of it sounds like it has this supernatural, just kind of weird fantasy to it. But it's all just grounded in these genuine human relationships that he is actually very good at writing, representing, and unpacking in all of these songs. The way this album kind of unfolds over time and tells a story is much more in line with I Love You, Honey Bear than anything on pure comedy, but it still has a little bit of that fun, edgy songwriting that made the parts of pure comedy that I enjoyed enjoyable. So I don't think it's better than I Love You, Honey Bear, but I do think it's a step, it retroactively makes me like pure comedy a little bit more, because I see okay, he's not just some self-obsessed dipshit. Maybe what he was going for on pure comedy didn't work entirely for me, but he's still the same guy who writes these sweet songs and does have a good perspective on these things and can make really compelling lyrics and knows how to write a good pop ballad, basically. Songs like The Palace and God's Favorite Customer and Mr. Tillman
and dumb enough to try. Jesus Christ!
Please Don't Die.
Yeah. Just Dumb Enough to Try is the best Father John Misty song ever, in my opinion.
It's his best since it's his best definitely since I Love You, Honey Bear. And oh my god, I haven't got to discuss, but I really do love this album, and as you guys have been saying, I really hate that I love this album, because I wanted to not like this album. It's Father John Misty. He has given me every reason in the world to not like him at this point, but damn it, Josh Tillman, you were going through a lot, man. I feel for you. But
it may not seem like it, but Father John Misty really going through a lot right now.
Exactly.
But actually, it do seem like it, because God, he is hurting on some of these songs. This is easily, definitely the most like emotionally wrought Father John Misty album. I think it really hits you in the emotions in a way that. But like I was talking about when I was angrily interrupting AJ, like there are songs in this album, and like I think the one thing that this album, first of all, it establishes a certain floor, which is there are going to be actual good songs that are of a consumable length and have really good musical ideas going on in them, and there are also going to be bars, because Father John Misty has bars. Last night I wrote a poem. Man, I must have been in the
fuck that.
poem
Fuck
zone.
Fuck that. Every like a visceral reaction every time I hear that.
Every time I hear that, I cackle.
It works.
It's
It works. It works in the song because the
funny.
entire song. Okay, AJ, shut up. The entire song is about like him basically being. It's heartbreaking because it's him being like, you know, oh, I'm this great songwriter. I can put these words together. But like when he talks about his wife, it's just so hard for him to kind of put the words together. He turns into like a bumbling idiot who says, "Man, I must have been in the poem zone because I wrote a poem." Like, yeah.
The
if
way
Mark
that he's able
Oslick
to
wrote that lyric, I would claim it as genius, but I just can't. Right now. I feel like this is the best shit I've ever heard in my life. I will plainly admit that is a me problem.
But to tie things back into the last album discussion, the difference in this album and then Kanye's recent work is that this is what happens when you have a wife who holds you accountable for being a piece of shit human being. Is that a take?
I think that's a take, but I would say it's not entirely unfair.
I would say here's the thing. Well, maybe I'm saying like maybe piece of shit human being is a little rough. Basically, just it can hold you accountable for doing bad things, because we need to talk about the narrative of this album, which is that it's not really fully explained. You kind of have to try to pick apart the details from what he's given you because he is kind of vague. But it's like, okay, so he checked himself into a hotel for a couple weeks. Something bad happened with his wife, and the album is sort of him trying to repair his relationship with his wife and him kind of going kind of mad, you know, at this hotel. And that's why this album is actually really compelling to me, because it's like there is like much like I Love You Honey Bear, there is like a narrative with this album. It is sort of in some ways the antithesis of I Love You Honey Bear. It's sort of, you know, like, hey, like these are the problems that we've had in this relationship, and this is me sort of exposing myself a little bit of like of the bad person I've been, and just trying to repair myself and repair this relationship. As the album is actually just like, it's really nice being like it's deeply personal and honest in a way that Father John Misty album hasn't quite been in some time. Really, pretty much, I mean, Pure Comedy was him. It's like Pure Comedy is an album. It's both like very deeply honest and very personal, and also him just like showboating a little bit. Like, hey, look at me, I'm Father John Misty. I know words and stuff. I read 2 dictionaries before I made this album. Like, do you remember I read George Orwell's 1884, and I wrote this album after I finished it. After I finished reading 2 copies, both at the same time. You know. And it's not pretentious, which is, I think, the big thing that I really like. Is like, okay, it's not pretentious. There's no pretensions behind this album. Maybe maybe Mr. Tillman's the closest it gets to pretentious, but like it works. Shut up. But I don't know what I'm saying. Also, Wise Blood is on this album, and she's great on it. And I really want a new Wise Blood album. There's a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts about this album, guys. All right,
it's good. It's real good, folks. Yeah, there's a lot of really great moments in this album. The Songwriter, I think, is a very, very, very simple song, but it is beautiful.
It's
and
brutal.
It's
also kind of brutal too.
It is very rough, but like it is a really. I mean, this year is a double whammy for where in 1 month, Alex Turner was self-aware, and then Father John Misty was self-aware, and then Kanye really wasn't. Like really wasn't. We're all over the place. We have no idea what to expect now from. Because Alex Turner being as self-aware as he was on that album, and the kind of here where Father John Misty is able to like seemingly take a step back from pure comedy and be like it seemed like I now would appreciate like with pure comedy it was like he was trying for something really noble, but it felt like kind of the way that he was interacting with the music press, he had kind of gotten spinned around so many times in his own antics that he kind of shoved his head all the way up his ass and didn't really kind of step back to see what he's doing. And this sort of personal like difficulty he's having in his relationship is forcing him to sort of reevaluate kind of what am I doing, how am I doing it, how am I presenting myself. And he still has like he's still Father John Misty, like he's still saying Poem Zone and shit like that. It's not like he's all of a sudden this serious songwriter. But I think I think it was Stephen Hayden on the Celebration Rock podcast said like, isn't it better to have this with its interesting as opposed to just something that's boring? It's like Father John Misty is trying stuff and he's doing really interesting things, and sometimes it sucks because what's gonna happen is you really try stuff is sometimes it's gonna suck. Not everyone can just perfectly experiment all the time, and I'm willing to give Father John Misty more of a benefit of a doubt after listening to this album and realizing that god damn he can write a good song really really well. And he's, even though often a exhausting public figure, he is undoubtedly an interesting one, which is not what you feel on pure comedy. You feel like this is just a bunch of fluff that doesn't amount to anything interesting or significant, but that is not at all what God's Favorite Customer is.
Yeah, also I like when he gets into his falsetto a little bit. It's really nice and sweet. He's got a good falsetto.
He's a good singer.
Josh is real good.
Also,
I want to see him live. I might go to Kansas City to go see him live.
And then here's the thing too: the Pure Comedy tour was like really fantastic to see brought to life. Even though some of the songs I was just like, meh, I don't like this. This is bad. But I was like, it's good. It's fun.
I also really really love Hang Out at the Gallows as an opener, and I've said this in the chat before and talked to Alex about it. But doesn't it kind of sound like a Radiohead song, like a tiny bit? Like, oh yeah, it's a Father John Misty song, but it's got some real Radiohead dust sprinkled all over it.
Also, can we talk about the production of the sound? The production of the sound is fucking fantastic. Like,
it's great.
Like again, Josh and Jonathan Rado have done some like they've done some. There's some really incredible stuff on here. Jonathan Rado has done,
especially after pure comedy that had so many instrumentals. Where there were beautiful instrumentals on pure comedy, but a lot of them just felt so kind of flat and not and because they had to carry these incredibly long song weights, they like with Mark Kozlock albums, if you got a 12-minute long song, there's only so much you can do across 12 minutes. It's gonna be a certain thing across the length of it. But like on pure comedy, it kind of felt like listless in a way that they do not sound here. Like everything here sounds great, really good.
I think I mean Jonathan Rado, like he's kind of quietly become one of the best producers of this decade so far. Like he's had a hand in like some really great albums over the past couple of years. Like he co-produced Whitney's debut, which was great. He co-produced the Alex Cameron album last year, which was great. He's done work with the Lemon Twigs, obviously the work on this album and all the stuff he's done with Foxygen that sounds really fantastic. Like this guy, he's good. Jonathan Rado, this boy knows what he's doing. But anyways, yeah, the production of them is great. The songwriting's great. It just fixes everything that I had problems with on pure comedy. It's like, okay, like, oh, I didn't really like all these long songs, because I just feel like that's just, the long songs do not highlight why I like Father John Misty. I like Father John Misty when he is working within pop song lanes, where he's working within the sort of the pop song structure, but, where it's bringing this really lush, incredible production with just great instrumentation and, again, really great vocals and a writing style that is very unique, like there's not really people who write lyrics like Father John Misty does. And there's also very, there's genuine emotion on this album that I didn't quite get across on pure comedy at times, where this is very like genuine and from the heart, and it's nice. And I actually also really like that he did like no press for this album, pretty much. It's just like, oh, hey, I got an album coming out, no interviews, nothing.
Oh, hey, also it leaked.
Oh yeah, it leaked.
It leaked a long time early.
It leaked on like Apple Music like super early. I'm surprised they didn't just release it. You know,
the day he announced it, it
It,
leaked.
it was like Bjork levels of and also I remember when that first leaked, I was like, boy, do I not want to listen to the leak of that album. And then cut to 1 month later when I'm in my car, like crying my eyes out to Just Dumb Enough to Try, blasting down the freeway. So yeah, certainly it's been quite a wild month in terms of my opinions on Father John Misty. But I like this album a lot. I think it's really great.
all right, so
It'll be on my end of year list for sure, like toward the top.
So let's finally establish this. Friendship ended with Kanye West. Now Josh Tillman is my best friend.
Run and tell that.
I see no way with how this could ever backfire on us.
Nope, not at all. I mean, Father John Misty, he's a good boy. He's not gonna do or say any dumb things ever. It's not like he's gonna reactivate his Twitter and be like dumbass.
His dumb things are a much more harmless kind of shenaniganry. But it's frustrating in its own way. So sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, I've said my piece with this album.
That's a dang podcast, baby.
I think that's a dang podcast. There we go.